Well, this is a latest addition to my little model steam engine collection. This is a Mamod Minor 1. Now I got this off eBay. It wasn't expensive. There was an auction, but I was lucky enough to win it. So it wasn't an awful lot of money at all. And compared to some of the steam engines that I've covered just recently, I mean, this is an extremely basic, simple little model steam engine, but it's important for various reasons. Because, first of all, if you lived in the UK like I do, then as a young lad, a Mamod model steam engine would have been your first introduction to model steam engines. For many people in this country, young lads, this would have been the model that you would have had, because this is the smallest of the Mamod models and it's also the cheapest. Mamod first started making these in 1939, not this particular one, this is a later one. They started making them in 1939 and at that time it was 5 shillings to buy one of these, which is, you know, even then that wasn't a horrendous amount of money. So it was a very common toy to have. So this one is in pretty good condition. There's some paint loss to the base and the firebox, but it's complete. All the fittings and the boiler and that are in absolutely excellent condition, and it's even got its original burner. Someone's taken all the paint off and polished it up. I'm not quite sure why they've done that, but there you go. So yeah, it's a nice little engine. Now, with the addition of this new little Mamod Minor 1, I'm lucky enough to have 3 from completely different time periods, which shows quite nicely the evolution of this little engine. This is the earliest model. This one was from the 1940s and is pretty much how they were when they were first produced in 1939. And this one was from the 1970s. So you can see quite clearly here the evolution of these engines. We'll have a close look at each one in turn. So this is the Mamod Minor 1 from round about 1940. The original ones like this had a disc cranked flywheel here. So there's no independent crank. The crank pin is directly onto the flywheel and it's stamped Mamod on the flywheel. It has a single wick burner. Oops, you can't see that. There you go. Single wick methylated spirits burner and a flat base. Now, on mine, when I got this, the base was missing. So I've actually manufactured. That's not an original base. I made that base for it, but it's identical in measurements to what the base would have been. So that's the 1940s version. And here's the new one. This would be early 1950s. This one. Now it has a proper separate flywheel. It has a level plug in the boiler, which the early one didn't have. And it has a proper crank. Again, it's got Mamod on it. These are really nice, these ones. Oh, and it's got the raised base. For the first time, Mamod introduced the raised base. There were 2 reasons for this. One, they thought it looked better with the raised base, but also, of course, it lifts the hot area where the burner is inside the firebox. It lifts that off the surface of whatever you've got this thing sat on. So they thought that was a good idea. So again, it has the single wick burner, exactly the same as the one in the first one. I'll tell you what, we'll have a quick look inside, see if I can get the camera to look inside the firebox. I don't know how well this is going to come out. We'll close in on the inside of the firebox. Let's add some light. There we go. So as you can see, what they've done is they've punched out 2 semicircles in the base and folded them up, and that makes a guide for the burner tube that feeds the wick tube, so that the burner will fit nicely in there and it will be lined up in the right place. So and that was quite a good idea. So this is the 1970s version. The Mamod Minor 1 would go out of production in 1979, but it had been in production for 40 years and sold just under 250,000 units, which is pretty amazing really for a toy like this. Changes between this one and the 1950s, well, we've now moved over to the vaporizing style of a Mamod burner. Now, Mamod said that they preferred these because they think these burners were safer. Basically, there is wadding inside this container, and when you pour your meths in through the top, that soaks it up, so you're less likely to get meth spillages. But to be honest with you, I would imagine the main reason for the change in the burner was cost. This is a lot cheaper to produce than one of these. Basically, this thing has got solder joints in it, so it means, and this would have all been done by hand, whereas the vaporizing burners are simply punched out of steel, and the top is crimped round. There's no solder joints in that whatsoever. So yeah, that was a change for the 70s version. What else has changed? Not much really. It's got exactly the same raised base. They increased the diameter of the flywheel. This flywheel is 1.5 inches. That one is about 1.3 inches. So yeah, they changed that. What else? Yeah, it's quite interesting. It's all cost saving. Right. If you look at, let me take the burner out. If you look at the top, the engine frame is now simply a strap that goes across the boiler, which is riveted on, and there's the part of the frame that holds the cylinder. So if we go back and have a look at the 1950s one, if you look at the top of the boiler, the engine plate extends around and underneath where the safety valve goes in. So basically they're saving money by chopping it off there, and that whole part of the plate is gone. Actually, let's have a look at the early one because it's easier to see because it's green. There, you can see there that the engine frame extends under the strap and round and underneath the safety valve. So they basically lopped that off and saved themselves a bit of brass. I'm not entirely sure how much money that's going to save, to be honest with you, but that's what they did. So yeah, there was significant changes across the course of the years, but fundamentally it stayed the same. The boiler's the same, other than the fact that it has a water level plug in the later years. Firebox is exactly the same. The vast majority is the same, and these are lovely little engines. They're great. You know, they're so easy to use. You know, obviously, just put a little bit of mess in the burner, light it up, water in the boiler, dead easy. Maybe a little bit of oil, and they run superbly. Here's inside the firebox of the 1970s, where you can see again they've punched out some of the base plate and folded it up to make a little tray to accept the vaporizing burner. So yeah, there you go, there's all three together. I've just had a look in the Mamod book, and as I said, this one was 5 shillings when it came out, which is really, really, really cheap. This one this arrived in 1950. This price had now increased to 22 shillings and 6pence. So that's quite an increase in price. But you know, we are talking what 11. Actually, no, the raised base plate didn't arrive until 1954. So yeah, so we're talking like 15 years. And then the 1970s one that started out in 1970 at 39 shillings and 6pence. So yeah, so there you go. Anyway, the star of today's show is the 1950s Mamod Minor 1, and I think it's time we steam this. Now, am I going to restore this? I probably will repaint the base plate because there's an awful lot of paint loss on that. But the rest of it, I may well repaint the burner because that should be light green like the one in the 1940s Mamod Minor. But the rest of it, I'm not going to touch. There's quite a bit of the decal still left, as you can see on the firebox. So I'm not going to touch that. And the firebox has only got a small amount of paint loss, so I may well do some a little bit of restoration. But there's no reason why this I shouldn't run at all. We'll just oil it up, and probably will use the burner, because I'm not entirely sure that I think one of the small Bix gas burners will fit, but it's going to be tight, so we'll probably use the mess burner. Well, we've got water in the boiler. We have our little single wick burner going away merrily. Yeah, I think we're not quite there yet, but we'll come back when we've got a bit of pressure up. Well, I think we're about there now. Yes, look at that, off she goes. Nothing wrong with that. As usual with these, they move around all over the place. Oh, now that was something that I didn't check and I should have done. The flywheel was loose. I didn't realise it. We nearly lost it. So I blew the burner out, and I've also taken the opportunity to put a couple of panel pins into the turntable so that it shouldn't, I hope, wander around too much. But we'll let it build up some pressure again, and hopefully we can have an uninterrupted run this time. I think we're nearly there. Yeah, there we go. Quiet. Fairly quiet, this one. Runs a treat. Especially when the flywheel's tight. Got a bit of a wobble on the flywheel. Not sure whether that's the shaft or the flywheel itself. Probably the shaft, I expect. But no, runs a treat. All I did was put a bit of steam oil in the cylinder and a little bit of lubricating oil on the shaft where it goes through the engine frame and on the con rod end. And yeah, what runs lovely. This is the beauty of this thing. It's just, it teaches young kids the basic mechanics of how a steam engine works. Now, okay, yes, I know it's an oscillating cylinder and it doesn't have any kind of valving other than the fact that the cylinder is moving over the port face, but it still, it still teaches the basics. Wonderful little engines. Anyway, that'll about wrap it up for this 1950s Mamod Minor 1. As always, I hope you've enjoyed the video, and thanks very much for watching. Cheers!